Have you ever wondered how a single starship could rattle the nerves of an entire galaxy? That's exactly what happened when the Terrans, who hadn't been heard from in decades, sent just one vessel toward the heart of the Great Federation. It was the simplest move, yet it caused more astonishment and anxiety than 1,000 warship fleet ever could. No one knew what the Terrans were planning. No one could figure out their technology or their motives. And at the center of it all, one person stood by a giant observation window, watching a tiny green blip on a holographic map and feeling his world change in real time. Admiral Jord Renna had seen all kinds of first contact situations in his 30 years serving on the Federation's diplomatic committee. He had encountered ambassadors from mysterious planets, sworn in uneasy treaties with newly discovered species, and endured endless negotiations over disputed star systems. But he had never seen anything as baffling as the Terran's approach. One single ship, traveling at a calm, steady speed, heading straight for Federation territory without any apparent fear or desire to show off. It didn't match any standard procedure he knew. Standing next to Jord, a young officer named Jana Park hurried into the command chamber with a data pad in her hands. She wore a look of disbelief. "Admiral," she said, "we've confirmed it for the 10th time. They're really sending only one ship, a 300-meter vessel. No other escorts. No hidden support craft. Nothing." Jord turned from the observation window. He had expected some sign of error, like a hidden fleet jumping in at the last minute. But the readings never lied. "Show me," he said, gesturing for Jana to hand over the pad. The screen displayed the scanning data. A single ship, about the length of 3 football fields, drifting peacefully toward them. The IT was sleek in design. No chunky cargo pods or spiky weapon turrets that the Federation typically spotted on warships. Instead, it had smooth angles and a kind of faint glow around its hull. Its identification label, newly deciphered from the Terran's own transmissions, read TFS Courage. A curious name, Jord thought, for a starship flying alone into the unknown. Jana's face betrayed her confusion. "Admiral, we know the Terrans achieved spaceflight just 2 centuries ago. We monitored their attempts at colonizing their home system. Then they went completely dark for 50 years. We assumed they'd lost interest in expanding or found some local problem to handle. Then, about a decade ago, out of nowhere, they showed up on 3 planets outside their solar system. No official announcements, no warp gate usage, no conventional travel logs. They were just there, without any explanation. That's what puzzles me," Jord said. "We never caught them traveling. They bypassed our usual trade routes and border controls like they weren't even there." He brought up a hologram of the Courage, spinning it slowly to observe every angle. "And now, after years of near silence, they want to talk to us? With only one ship." Jana frowned. "The other Federation members are worried. The Merrics think this is a trick. The Andorran want to send a battle group to intercept, and the Varen, usually the calmest of us all, are incredibly nervous." Jord studied the hologram, searching for hidden details. "What about the ship's energy readings?" "That's even stranger," Jana replied. "There's no normal radiation trail, no subspace markers. Our instruments can't lock onto a consistent signature. Sometimes it looks like it's barely using enough power to keep life support running. Other times, it spikes to a level you'd need to power an entire star." Before Jord could reply, a council summons interrupted them. A deep, resonant voice played over the intercom. "Admiral Renta, your presence is requested in the Grand Assembly Chamber." The Terrans have sent an official message. 30 representatives from various worlds had gathered in that vast chamber, each seated in an arc around the central platform where Jord now stood. The recorded transmission from the TFS Courage echoed across the curved walls. A calm female voice spoke perfect Federation standard. "Greetings, Great Federation. I am Captain Arya Wynn of the Terran fleet ship Courage. We wish to open diplomatic relations. We will arrive at your borders in approximately 1 day and look forward to meeting you." The recording ended, leaving the chamber in a hush. Finally, a Graxis envoy broke the silence. "That's all? No formal statements? No list of demands or protective terms? That's unusual. Maybe they're just confident," Jord said quietly. "Or incredibly naive." A representative of the Trivex, known for their boldness, snorted. "Either they have no idea how many ships we can bring to bear, or they're sure we won't try anything." Jord cleared his throat. "I recommend we welcome them with our usual diplomatic protocols. but we should keep our eyes open. This situation is far from ordinary. While the council debated, Jord thought about the Terrans' baffling technology and the Courage's calm greeting. They were coming with just one small starship. Were they foolhardy, or did they know something the Federation didn't? By the time the meeting adjourned, the Federation had decided to greet the Terrans with a show of unity and power. 500 ships were deployed along the border, forming a massive wedge in space. Every hull glimmered under the bright starlight, lined up in a near-perfect formation. Jord and Jana stood on the bridge of the Federation's flagship, the Dawn's Crest, monitoring as the TFS Courage slid into view. It was beautiful in a minimalistic way, all smooth lines and pale plating. There were no visible cannons or missile bays, which made half of the Federation officers uneasy. They were used to spotting weapon ports a mile away. Yet the Courage looked almost peaceful. Jord straightened. Open channel. The main screen flickered, showing the interior of the Terran ship. Captain Arya Wynn stood at the center, wearing a simple black uniform with gold trim at the cuffs. She looked relaxed, offering a slight bow of respect. Admiral Renta, thank you for welcoming us with such an impressive sight. He returned the bow. Captain Wynn, on behalf of the Federation, I welcome you. We felt it necessary to ensure safety on both sides. A tall, reptilian Graxis commander loomed behind Jord. We show our full capabilities to new arrivals, the Graxis said firmly, its voice raspy. It's standard practice. Arya nodded politely. We appreciate it. We chose to send only one ship, so we wouldn't cause any misunderstandings. We hope to show goodwill by not arriving in large numbers. The Graxis commander's scales changed color slightly, betraying tension. Jana leaned in. Captain Wynn, our data suggests your vessel has a crew of only 200. Is that right? Arya's eyes sparkled. That's correct. It's more than enough for our purposes. Jord exchanged a glance with Jana. Most Federation destroyers needed at least 1,000 people just to operate, and bigger capital ships needed multiple thousands. How could the Terrans run a 300-meter vessel with only 200 people? Captain, Jord said, would you be open to docking with our flagship for face-to-face discussions? Arya smiled. Certainly, although I notice your docking bay is a bit tight for us. Would you mind if we adjust it? Adjust it, the Graxis commander asked, puzzled. Before anyone could object, a gentle blue beam reached out from the Courage to the Dawn's Crest. Everyone on the Federation bridge froze. Where the beam touched the hull, the metal itself began to stretch and mold, enlarging the docking bay entrance as though it were made of soft clay. Within moments, the bay was big enough to accommodate the Courage with ease. The entire flagship's command crew gawked at the sight. Jana's mouth dropped open. They just reshaped battle-grade alloys from a distance without any hint of strain, she whispered. Jord found his voice. Captain Wynn, that's quite a demonstration. We wanted to help, Arya said lightly. Don't worry. Once we leave, the bay will revert to its original design. We'll be docking in 5 minutes. The screen cut off. Jord stared at the enlarged docking bay, feeling an odd mix of awe and anxiety. Their strongest metal had been manipulated like modeling clay. One ship, he muttered under his breath. They only needed one because it's already more than we can handle. When the Courage entered the docking bay, the procedure was astonishingly smooth. Even from a distance, Jord sensed it was practically effortless for them to maneuver. He took a deep breath, then led the welcoming party down to the arrivals area to greet their guests. Arya Wynn appeared with her chief engineer, Tevin Kwan. Tevin carried a small silver container under one arm. Despite the swirling tension around them, both Terrans walked in calmly, smiling in a friendly manner. Arya greeted Jord and the gathered representatives with polite warmth. There was something about her that felt genuine, like she truly wanted to be here for peaceful reasons. The meeting room aboard the Dawn's Crest filled with delegates from more than 20 worlds. Everyone watched as Arya and Tevin placed the silver container on the central table. Arya cleared her throat. Before we talk business, we'd like to show you a little demonstration, something to help you understand what our ship can do. Jord glanced at Jana, who nodded her readiness to record. He looked around at the suspicious stares from some corners of the room. By all means, Captain, he said, forcing a level tone. Tevin touched the container, and it opened up like a mechanical flower, revealing a tiny replica of the Courage. The miniature ship floated a few centimeters above the container, rotating gently. Tevin's expression was cheerful. This model is in real-time sync with our actual ship, he explained. Whatever it does, this miniature will display. The mini Courage blinked out of sight, and the monitors in the room displayed the real Courage doing the same thing in the docking bay. Within a single heartbeat, the screen showed the Courage popping into existence near a distant gas giant, then near a brilliant blue star, then near a black hole. Each jump took no more than a blink, and each location was light years apart. A Merrick scientist stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. "This is impossible," he said, his voice trembling. "Traveling that distance would require unthinkable power." Tevin shrugged. "We found another way to move. We call them shortcuts, though that's not a technical term. It barely uses any energy at all." Soon after, the Courage reappeared in the docking bay as though it had never left. The delegates erupted into shocked whispers, some of them outright exclamations of disbelief. Arya raised her hand for calm. "That's just one trick," she said. "We can also do this." Tevin tapped the container again. The miniature Courage glowed, then split into 4 identical copies, each one hovering with the same faint glow. On the monitors, the real Courage did the same, dividing into 4 ships. A few delegates shrieked or jumped behind chairs, expecting a sudden attack. But nothing of the sort happened. The ships simply floated, peacefully waiting. "It's handy for exploration," Tevin explained. "We can duplicate ourselves for about 6 hours before we merge back into one unit. All copies are fully real. They aren't illusions." George felt his mouth go dry. "You can multiply your entire vessel." Arya nodded. "Temporarily, yes. We can also change the size of the ship if needed." As if on cue, the model shrank to the size of a grain of sand, then grew until it filled nearly half of the table surface. On the live feed, the same bizarre transformations took place with the real ship. Finally, it resumed its normal size, and the 4 duplicates merged smoothly back into one that Arya offered a casual smile, as though she hadn't just shattered every scientific principle the Federation had cherished for centuries. "We don't mean to overwhelm you," she said. "This is just to show we aren't helpless, even if we arrived with only one vessel. We hope this helps clear up some questions about why we travel the way we do." There was dead silence in the room until Jord found his voice. "You came with one ship because you never needed more?" Arya hesitated. "We came with one ship because arriving in large numbers would feel unfair. We're here to talk as equals, not conquerors or bullies." That notion lingered in the air, especially for those who had worried about a Terran invasion. The calm, earnest explanation was more unnerving than any threat. Something more was happening under the surface that no one fully grasped. And from Arya's tone, it was clear the Terrans had traveled very far down a path of discovery that the Federation had never even noticed in a quiet corridor beyond the main conference room. Jord watched as security logs showed an undercover Graz spy attempting, and failing, to infiltrate the Courage. A Merrick spy was scanning the outer hull, and a Sardin agent was caught in a weird time loop trap. None of them managed to get inside the Terran ship, yet the Terrans were watching them with mild amusement, not aggression, that a Terran security chief, Haroon Shane, sipped tea while monitoring their attempts. "We like to keep an eye on visitors," he said cheerfully when Jord and Janna entered. "We figured you'd send a few folks to poke around uninvited. Happens in most first contacts." George's cheeks flushed. I'm not sure how to respond to that." "It's okay," Haroon said with a good-natured grin. "We found your Federation observation posts around our homeworld 60 years ago. That's actually how we learned so many of your languages and customs. It's been fascinating watching you try to figure us out." Janna's eyes widened. "You knew about those posts all along." Haroon shrugged. "They were hidden pretty well, but we have unique ways of detecting visitors." Through one of the monitors, the Sartan agent was suddenly freed from the loop. She stood in confusion in a corridor, surrounded by a small garden of exotic flowers. Haroon checked a note on his console. "She loves horticulture from her home planet. We grew a mini garden for her. We're hoping it makes her feel welcome." Janna nearly dropped her data pad. "You created a room for a spy who broke onto your ship? It's polite," Haroon explained. "Besides, maybe this is the start of a friendly conversation." Jor had no idea what to say. It felt like the Terrans had been studying the Federation in detail for decades, while the Federation knew almost nothing about them. "So, you're not angry about the infiltration attempts?" he asked. Haroon shook his head. "No point in anger. We're all curious creatures. If anything, we find it fun to see how you approach the unknown." A short while later, Jord and Janna were summoned to another large assembly, where the Terrans revealed the biggest shock of all. Their science officer, Mini Core, stood before an expanded holographic star map, explaining that the Terrans had knowledge of deeper layers of space, ones the Federation had never even guessed existed. Those layers allowed them to travel thousands of light years in a single step and do it without conventional warp drives. Then Mini changed the image to reveal something monstrous. A cosmic entity so large it dwarfed entire star systems, moving steadily toward their galaxy from a deeper layer of reality. "We detected this 3 years ago," she said. "It swallows everything, light, matter, even space itself. It has already consumed at least 3 galaxies and is still growing." A wave of fear spread through the Federation representatives. The idea of something bigger than a galaxy devouring entire stretches of space felt beyond comprehension. Arya Wynn spoke in a calm, measured tone. "We've been protecting this region from such threats for a while, quietly making sure these dangers never touched your worlds. But this creature is too big for us alone. We want your help. We need it, in fact." Agraxis delegate's eyes narrowed. "Your technology is obviously leagues above ours. Why do you need us?" Many smiled gently. "You see things differently. You innovate in ways we don't. You might come up with solutions we'd never imagine. And we want to stand with you, not just watch from a distance." "What's in it for you?" asked another skeptical representative. Arya's answer was simple. "We love what you create. Your art, music, stories, and all the little triumphs that make life beautiful. We think it's time you joined us in exploring the deeper ocean of reality." The council chamber fell into an uneasy hush. Nobody had realized how enormous the cosmos truly was. There had always been grand mysteries, but to learn that the Terrans had been quietly shielding them from cosmic nightmares was as humbling as it was shocking. Now, that shield was pulling back. It was time for the Federation to step up. In the days that followed, the Federation found itself splitting. Some species, such as the Trivex, insisted on rallying a war fleet to drive the Terrans away, suspecting a trap. Others, like the Varen, immediately embraced the Terran invitation. They wanted to learn everything about these deeper layers of reality. Fear and hope clashed among the Federation worlds, leading to a tense standoff in open space. On one side, a group of 200 Federation warships prepared for conflict. On the other, those who wanted to ally with the Terrans flew under flags of friendship. All the while, the TFS Courage drifted calmly, waiting. Its captain did not bristle or threaten. Instead, Arya Wynn hailed Jord privately. "Admiral, the Federation is your family, not ours. We don't want to tear it apart. But if some of you fire on us, we will have to defend ourselves. Maybe we should reveal more of what's been here all along." Arya pressed a button on her console, and the empty space around the Courage seemed to ripple. Like lifting a cosmic curtain, it unveiled a hidden armada of Terran ships, 10,000 in total. Some were small, barely bigger than shuttles, while others were immense, overshadowing the biggest Federation dreadnoughts. They formed a tight sphere around the entire Federation grouping. A hush fell over all frequencies. The Terrans had effectively surrounded the Federation with a force that could not have been conjured overnight. These ships must have been there for a long time, cleverly veiled by the Terrans' advanced technology. Panic flashed across the warship crews. Then Arya spoke, her voice soft but carrying weight. "These aren't warships," she reassured them. "They're mostly science vessels, schools, and research labs. We brought our explorers and teachers, not our soldiers. Please don't be afraid." One by one, the rebellious Federation ships powered down their weapons, uncertain and overwhelmed. It was obvious that fighting this display was hopeless. And, surprisingly, the Terrans showed no interest in pressing that advantage. They simply waited with polite patience for cooler heads to prevail. Finally, the Grax's commander admitted, "You could have conquered us at any time. Why hold back?" "Because conquering you was never our goal," Arya explained. We came to stand beside you, not to take over. That was the moment a collective realization seemed to wash over everyone. The Terrans truly wanted partnership. What they offered was not subjugation, but a hand extended in alliance. And the Federation, in its mixture of wonder and fear, had to decide whether to clasp that hand. All eyes turned to Jorrenta. Aria's face appeared on a screen again. "Admiral, would you like to see what's inside some of these ships?" she asked. "We have entire libraries of knowledge, labs that can bend space, and gardens that cross time. If we're going to stop that cosmic entity together, we need to combine all of our strengths." Jord, swallowing the last of his pride and lingering fear, nodded slowly. "We'll come aboard." Over the next several months, a remarkable partnership took shape. Terrans and Federation engineers worked side by side. Federation scientists contributed their unique problem-solving methods, while Terrans opened the door to brand new fields of physics. The TFS Courage turned out to be more than a starship. It was a floating academy, a gateway to deeper universes. Many core-led sessions in a special possible room, a place where reality's boundaries were fluid. Federation students learned to manipulate small pockets of space-time. They discovered how the Terran shortcuts worked, gleaning at least the basic concepts for themselves. Meanwhile, Federation species taught Terrans about unique approaches to technology. Each group found they were stronger together. All the while, the colossal space-devouring creature loomed closer. Day by day, its presence tugged at the edges of known reality. But the newly united alliance was far from helpless. Under the Terrans' guidance, they combined forces to engineer a massive stand. It wasn't a typical war plan with cannons and torpedoes. It was a grand weaving of different specialties. The Varen had discovered a way to channel cosmic singing that soothed the creature's hunger. The Merrics had found a method to reshape its feeding impulses, and the Terrans provided the stage that allowed everyone to work in concert. When the entity finally arrived, the Federation Terran fleet was ready, arranged in a formation beyond anything previously imagined. The TFS Courage grew to monstrous proportions, unfolding like a fractal flower in space. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds fit into its structure, forming a tapestry of science, harmony, and willpower. The cosmic beast tried to consume them as it had devoured entire galaxies, but it found itself meeting an equal, not prey. The chorus of technologies and shared minds turned the entity's own hunger back onto itself. Rather than destroy it, they transformed it, taming its ravenous presence until it became something as gentle as a newborn star. In the aftermath, the cheers and celebrations were unrestrained. Terrans, Trivex, Graxis, Merix, Varen, Sartan, and many more embraced each other in joy. They had just saved their galaxy together. The final blow to fear came when the Federation realized how different everything looked when no single species tried to control the outcome. They each brought a piece of the solution. That joined puzzle had created a bright new future for them all. The TFS Courage shrank back to its usual size. Admiral Jorrenta found himself standing in that same docking bay where he had first greeted Captain Arya Wynn. The difference was that now the air felt lighter and filled with hope. He walked with Arya among the Terran crew and Federation visitors chatting like old friends. He marveled at the knowledge, technology, and relationships forged in a matter of months. Janna approached, her voice trembling with excitement. "Admiral, we had no idea how vast the universe really is. This changes everything." Jord nodded, and it all began with one ship. One ship that knew us better than we knew ourselves, that believed in us before we believed in them. Arya caught his eye. "We never wanted to overwhelm you," she said softly. "We just needed that first friendly step forward. Sending a fleet would have raised everyone's alarm. We hoped you'd see us not as an enemy, but as a friend you didn't realize you already had." Jord thought about how the Federation used to view the Terrans. As a mystery, a possible threat, a puzzle to solve. Now, they were indispensable allies. He turned to Arya and said, "So where do we go from here?" A sparkle of excitement danced in her eyes. "Wherever we want. There are deeper universes to explore. We might find wonders or face new perils. But we go there together now." And that was the ultimate shift. The Federation no longer stood alone on the edge of the known galaxy, building fleets to intimidate or forging alliances out of fear. They were now part of something bigger, a partnership with a people whose curiosity matched their power. And if one starship had been enough to bring them this far, who could guess what 10,000 starships, unified by friendship, might accomplish in the future? That single question lingered in George's mind as he watched the TFS Courage and its Terran companions gently guide Federation ships into new dimensions of discovery. No more secrets, no more silent guardians behind hidden curtains. They were stepping into a grander cosmos hand in hand. It felt humbling, invigorating, and freeing all at once. Across every corner of Federation space, people from 20-year-olds dreaming of interstellar adventures to 60-year-olds who thought they'd seen it all were murmuring in awe. They'd tune into the latest updates, wide-eyed, whispering to each other that this was exactly what they needed, a spark of hope in a universe that had suddenly grown a little less dark and a lot more alive. Because sometimes that's all it takes. One ship, one quiet, unexpected visitor who opens the door to a bigger world, reminding everyone that when we stand together, there's no limit to what we could discover. And this was only the beginning.